G'day, how you going? Let's get our hands on this Blackstone Fortress Chaos Lord and turn him into a bit of a Night Lord. We'll just have a quick inspection of the sprue here, see what we're going to do to him. We're going to chop off his top knot. We're going to chop off his face. We're going to give him a new helmet. We're going to chop that hammer off his power maul. We're going to give him a bit more of a Night Lord power maul. And we're going to scrape away that icon on his shoulder pad. Make room for a bit of a Night Lord freehand. Part 1, the helmet. First thing we've got to do is just get this fella. The Knight of Shrouds. This guy here. We're going to pinch his helmet. We'll paint it. We'll give him a different head later on. Don't worry about that. But that's his helmet, and we're going to use that for the Night Lord because it's perfect, I reckon. Looks nice and scary, and it's got those cool wings coming off the side. First thing, let's chop off his top knot. Do it carefully though, because it's a pretty cool little piece and we might be able to use that for something later on. Next, we got to go and cut away these knobs on the back of his helmet and smooth it out a little bit. Now let's butt it up to the face and see what we're dealing with, what we've got to do next. We're going to be making lots of little adjustments to both the face and the helmet. So we'll have to keep on putting it back together like this and just seeing how it's fitting, and then we can adjust further as needed. Let's go and clip his poor face off. It's going to be a bit hard to salvage this face, so I'm not too worried about it. We're just going to have to live with it. This face is going to get wrecked. But not to worry, we're going to put a mad helmet on him instead. So now we're just going to see how this is fitting. Looks like we're going to have to make some adjustments to the face. We'll use a scalpel and begin cutting away this chin area. We want to get this nice and smooth, get rid of all of those bits of face that you can still see there. We just want a blank canvas for this helmet. We need to cut down the chin on this helmet so that it fits into the power armor. Again, we're going to have a quick look. Looks like we need to take a little bit more away from the helmet. This is just a process of adjusting. We just have to butt it up to the face and then just keep making adjustments, scraping away these little bits of cheek here. Just doing what we got to do to make it fit. Using a bit of blue tack, we can just whack it on and see how it's looking. We can see we've got a bit of bare head at the back there, so this is going to be more of a mask than a helmet. Get out the old ratty bag of milliput. This has been going for yonks, this stuff, so that's why it's looking a bit. How's it going? Just going to take equal parts of the yellow stuff and the brown stuff. Probably going to get way too much as usual. Then we're going to mix it all together and then place it on our thumb, on our thumbnail, so it's nice and accessible. Pull a bit off and whack it into this cavity in the back of the helmet. Then we can sort of smooth out these eye sockets. We don't need to do any kind of fancy sculpting here. We're not sculpting eyes. All we're doing is just creating a nice smooth surface so that we can paint some eyes onto it later on. We'll get some plastic glue onto the plastic section of the head there while the putty is still workable. So it's not dry yet. And then we can press it onto the face. While that putty is still workable, we'll just clean it up a little bit with our sculpting tools. Just cleaning it up, doing a bit of tidy up, pushing it back into the cheeks so we don't have any ugly bits sticking out. Next we're going to get this piece, which is an AdMech piece. I don't even know what it's from. And those little knobbly bits, that's what we want. We're going to cut those off ×2. Whack him on a piece of blue tack so it's easy to hold, and we're going to get some plastic glue here. Put too much on, so you get a paper towel and just touch it, just lightly kiss it, and let the paper towel soak up that excess glue. And then we're going to just place this onto the side of the cheek, and this is going to be some sort of gas canisters or something on his helmet, just making him look a little bit more 40k and less Age of Sigmar. And you don't have to use those specific pieces from that gun, that plasma gun thing. You can just have a rummage through your bits box and find any kind of piece that might work well as a gas canister, or just any kind of techie looking thing that you can put on the side of his helmet here, just to fill those gaps. Now I'm going to show you how to sculpt a really quick strap on the back of his head. Like I said before, this is sort of turned into a bit of a mask rather than a helmet. So just roll out a sausage of sculpting putty and position it on his head, and using some sculpting tools, just lightly flatten it down, start sort of making it look a bit like a leather strap. We can put a bit of water in our thumb there and dip the sculpting tools in the water and mix it together with the milliput. Milliput works really well with water. It kind of takes on that water and softens it, makes it a little bit easier to work with. If you mix enough of that water with it, it will turn into a bit of a slurry or a paste. Just gradually refine this strap and make it nice and flat and smooth, and then we can use the scalpel to kind of push it into position a bit more, sharpen up those edges, and we can even begin creating a bit of a chain link at the base of it there. If you want, you could get away with not doing that chain link. You could make that strap just kind of merge into the back section of the helmet there. That'd be fine. Finally, let's get a paintbrush, an old paintbrush with some water on it, and just lightly paint over the sculpted area. And this just kind of smooths it out a little bit and gets rid of any kind of crumbs or dodginess. Just makes it nice and smooth. Now we can go ahead and glue the two body halves together. Big squeeze. Using some of that milliput that was left out, we can mix some water with it, and mix quite a lot of water with it into a bit of a slurry. And this is what I use to fill the gaps when I glue two pieces of plastic together. You can see it's just really soft and just goes straight into those gaps. Then hook out the paintbrush, the old paintbrush, and with a bit of water, just smooth it, just paint over it and make it nice and smooth. You can completely feather it out and you won't even need to sand it. I just didn't bother even sanding that. It's good enough. Part 2, the shoulder pad. This is a really cool design here, but it's very Black Legion, it's very Horus, so unfortunately we're going to have to scrape it off. We're going to put a bit of a freehand icon here for a Night Lord. So be very careful when you're doing this. You don't want to dig into that shoulder pad too much, because you're going to have to repair it with some putty or something later on. We'll begin knocking off the bulk of the dodginess with an old file. Just try and get it as smooth as you can. And that's still a little bit rough. So we're going to hook out some sandpaper and just continue refining it. We're going to work our way down the sandpaper chain, getting some finer grit as we go, and making it just smoother and smoother until it's as smooth as a baby's bum, ready for some freehand. Now let's make his power ball a little bit more unique. Here we've got a power maul from a plague marine, or whatever it's called, a plague mace, I don't know, mace of contagion, I don't know. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to chop off this sledgehammer looking thing. All we need to do is just lightly score around the base of it, and then we can kind of bend it, and it'll sort of break off quite neatly. And when it's about 90% off, we can use the scalpel just to get that last little bit. Then we're going to chop off the head of the mace of contagion, and we're going to attach that with some plastic glue, aren't we? Now when we do this kind of thing, we want to make sure we get that mace, we want to get those two pieces on cleanly, and we don't want to fiddle with it too much because it's going to become pretty weak. So get it on, have a really quick look at it from all angles and make sure it's straight. If it's not, make any adjustments quickly. Now because we chopped off that hammer, that sledgehammer, we kind of cut some of these cables in half. So we need to continue those on with a little bit of sculpting putty. And I'm using some Procreate here, but you can use whatever sculpting putty you want. Procreate's a little bit more tacky and sticky, sort of like green stuff, so it clings to this power maul pretty easily. Using our sculpting tools, we're just going to smooth it out a little bit and try and make it look like there's no join in it. You just get a little clump of the putty and press it on there, and away we go. Start shaping it into what resembles a pipe or a cable. And these cables on this model are all knobbly and bumpy and random looking anyway, so we don't even need to make this look too specific. Let's chop this tab off the arm here so we can position it on the model later on without having to glue it. It will make it easier for painting. Originally I wanted to have like lightning bolts coming off this power maul. So I grabbed these spare Skaven parts that I've got here. They're just kind of like smoke or something, magic looking smoke. But if you get something like that, you can kind of scrape them and shave them down a little bit and sort of reshape those little pieces of smoke or whatever they are and make them sort of look like lightning strikes. I ended up chopping them off later on because I thought they looked a bit clunky. Maybe I didn't shave them down enough, maybe I didn't make them thin enough, but for whatever reason I just decided that the model didn't need them. But regardless, I'm going to show you how I made them anyway, just in case they might be useful to you. Just swap between scalpels and sandpaper and the odd file here and there, just make them look like lightning strikes. Part 4, the gun barrel. This is how we drill out a nice perfect gun barrel. So you got to start off with something sharp like a pin or a sculpting tool and find the center point of the gun barrel and press it in there so we know where the center is. And now the drill is going to fit really snugly, really nicely in the center there, and we can begin drilling out the gun barrel, and we don't have to worry about it being off center. You can see it looks nice and centered now. We'll get out the old scalpel and give it a bit of a bevel so it's not just a sharp edge. It's got a slight bevel to it. Just makes it a little bit more refined. There we are. That's a very easy gun barrel. For this model, I ended up making 2 different kinds of bases. The first one, option A, is a graveyard. So you got to start with about 1 billion skulls and have fun cleaning them. Cleaning those mold lines. Make sure you do it. Then we'll get some clay, just some basic nasty art store type clay. Nothing fancy, we're just kind of going to use this to add some volume. So we start off with our 40mm base, and we've got some junk sticking out of it. Just some 40k universe type scrap, whatever we got lying around. Begin pressing this clay onto the base and making a bit of a mound, a bit of a battlefield looking situation here. Battlefield / graveyard. If we mix a little bit of water onto it, it makes it easier to sculpt with, and we can sort of push it around a little bit. Next we're going to get some of our skulls and begin placing them. When we're happy with where the skull sits, just give it a light press and push it into that clay while it's still wet. And go and use all of the skulls that you've cleaned to do this, because we're going to make this look like, I don't know, either a graveyard or a battlefield with lots of skulls and bones and things like that. There we go, there's plenty of skulls, and those are going to be fun to paint. Perfect for a Night Lord. Next morning when it's dry, we have to take these skulls out because they're not going to stick to that clay very well. And you can see they just fall out almost very easily. So we need to glue those back in place with super glue. And that's very easy too. They just fit like it's a puzzle piece. They fit perfectly back into that dried clay. Next we can glue on some rocks and a bit of debris here and there using super glue. Then we'll get our old brush and begin painting just some clumps of PVA glue, not over the entire base, just here and there, sort of between some of the skulls and over them a little bit, over those rib cages, just to make them look like they're kind of buried a little bit. And then once we've done that, we're going to go out into the garden with our little container and get some garden soil and sprinkle this over. And this is the best stuff, I reckon. Just garden soil, just the dirt in your backyard. It's better than sand. It's a lot finer, more in scale with Warhammer models than sand is. Sand looks a little bit too big in my opinion. And you get a lot of variation with this stuff. Like you can get some little sticks and some little rocks, all that sort of stuff. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more detail to the base by sculpting just some random little bits and pieces, maybe some little rocks or whatever. It's not really that necessary to do this, but I just wanted to clean up a couple of the dodgy looking bits. Now let's make some spent shell casings. Just going to use some of this rod here and get our scalpel and just lightly twist it on the end there, just to make a little bit of a dip. You don't need to go all the way in, or you don't need to drill these out. Or better yet, if you've got some really thin tubing, that's going to be better. And there we go, we just chop them up. We got some basic shell casings, and we can just start gluing them all over the base. And I feel like the base needed this because it was looking a little bit like an Age of Sigmar type graveyard. Just putting some bullet shells, it just makes it in the 40k universe instantly. Now we're drilling a hole into this little statue here so that we can place some lightning in there. We're going to glue the end of it with some plastic glue and just pop him in that drilled out hole. And we're going to do the same thing to the power maul with some other bits of lightning that we created earlier. And we've positioned the model on the base there so that we can kind of position these little lightning strikes so that they're kind of trying to reach each other. The lightning strike on the base is reaching for the lightning strike on the power maul, like they're sort of arcing and they're about to touch. as I said before, I ended up chopping them off anyway, so. Part 6, base option B. This is how we make the Space Marine frozen in ice. First thing we need is to get our hand out of the way so we can see what we're actually doing. Since you can't see, I'll just tell you. We're just chopping the top of this base off, just like this. So we've got the ring, we've got the rim, and we've got the surface. Grab our scalpel and start cleaning up the edges of this rim, making it look a little bit more smooth. But be very careful because it's quite fragile. Get your clippers and just clip these big knobs off. They go flying. And then we'll give it a sand just to make it nice and smooth. Don't have to make it amazing, just need to make it a little bit smoother so that it's not going to cause any problems. Grab our plastic glue and smash a bunch of this around one edge, one side of this base, and press it up to one side of the rim. So it's not going to glue on one side like so. So it's quite fragile. So make sure you don't drop it. Now we'll get our Space Marine components and start clipping him down because we need to make him look like he's frozen in ice and he's going to be disappearing into the depths of the sea or wherever he is, the lake. Get the bulk of it off with the clippers there, and we got to position him in the base and see what we're dealing with. We need him to be completely submerged under the ice. If the top of his chest plate is sticking out of the ice at all, it's not going to look very good. It'll sort of wreck the illusion that he's under the ice. So we need to just keep on making adjustments here. We take away a little bit and put him in the base, check the levels, and scrape away some more. You want to just take a little bit at a time. You don't want to go too far with this. You could wreck the piece if you cut away too much. So just a little bit at a time. Steady does it. Slow and steady. And I reckon that's probably about good enough there. That's what we're looking for. So same thing with the helmet. Just chop the helmet in half. Be very careful not to chop your fingers. And we'll have to do the same thing. We're going to have to shave that helmet down a little bit so that the helmet's not sticking out of the top of the ice. I'm going to use this hand, the waving hand. I'm going to clip off the shoulder so that we can make it sticking out like this, like he was reaching for help when he got frozen. Let's get rid of those pieces for now and hook out the old milliput once again. Mix up a bunch of it and roll it into sausages and sort of push them into the corners, the crease of this base. Then dip your finger in some water and sort of just coat the milliput with a bit of water. It just makes it easier to work with. We're going to begin pressing this putty down into the crease. And we want to hold the base firmly against the table so that we can push this putty right down, and it's going to fill those gaps where we couldn't glue the base to the rim. So that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing we're doing is we're creating a bit of a curved edge, and we're going to use this tool to smooth it out because we're going to paint this black later on, and we don't want any sharp edges that are going to catch the light. We want to create the illusion that this is a deep sea, almost like a never-ending sea. Smash a bit of plastic glue all over the bottom of the base here. and start gluing our pieces in. I'll explain this in the painting video, but I ended up making this base twice because this one that you see here, I unfortunately wrecked it. So I did a couple of things a little bit different on the second time around. It's mostly the same. One thing I did differently is that base, I've got it the wrong way right here. We need to flip that base upside down, so those ugly knob bits that we clipped off before, you don't see those, they're facing downwards. Second thing I did differently was this hand. I made it less leaning backwards like this because it looks a little bit like it's waving, which is a bit strange. So on the other one, I made it so that he's kind of reaching upwards more. The hand is more vertical, and here you can see what I mean. This is that base finished, well, painted. You can see that the hand's reaching out. It doesn't look like he's waving. The other thing I did was I added a little corner of a shoulder pad there. And here we can see the finished base after it's painted, and we've had the resin pour, we've created the snow, added a little skull. And here we can see the bottom of the base. We want those knobs facing downwards like this. And also you can see that putty filling the gaps. So this is the base I ended up choosing for the Night Lord instead of the graveyard base. And I'm really glad I did because I think it turned out pretty awesome. Hope you enjoyed watching the process of how I converted this Night Lord from the Blackstone Fortress fella. Make sure you check out the other video so you know how to paint him. See you next month with another epic model. Hooroo!